Ladies and gentlemen, I rise today not to entertain your mind, but to provoke your spirit. There are moments in life where your greatest strength is not found in what you say, but in what you choose not to say. The greatest mistake you can make is assuming that just because a thought entered your mind, it has earned the right to exit through your mouth. There is something dangerous about speaking too soon. There is something costly about opening your mouth before the right moment. Some of the most painful delays in life do not come from the devil, but from our own inability to remain silent. Many people think that communication is power, but I have come to learn that silence is often the most powerful form of wisdom. Life and death are in the power of the tongue, not just in what you say to others, but also in what you reveal about yourself. When you speak prematurely, you give people access to something that was still in development. The tragedy is not just that they misunderstand it. The tragedy is that they may kill it before it has strength to survive. Not every truth is for every year. That means there are things you know that are true, but that truth must be kept until it's time. You must understand that even truth, when spoken in the wrong environment, becomes vulnerable. It becomes open to attack, to criticism, to sabotage, not because it was wrong, but because it was exposed before it was ready. You see, destiny is like a seed. No farmer takes a seed and places it on the sidewalk. No, he places it in the ground, out of sight, in darkness, in stillness. And he leaves it there. He doesn't call his neighbors to watch the process. He doesn't broadcast the planting to the world. He understands the seed must go through its process in private. Why? Because exposure before establishment can lead to extinction. Many of you are experiencing unnecessary battles, not because you lack favor, but because you lack discretion. You had a divine idea, and instead of incubating it, you posted it. You had a dream, and instead of praying over it, you discussed it. You had a vision, and instead of fasting for clarity, you ran for applause. And what happened? The very thing God gave you began to crumble, not because it wasn't from God, but because you let the wrong ears hear the right truth. Look at Joseph. He had a dream. The dream was real. The dream was from God. But the moment he opened his mouth and shared it with those who didn't share his purpose, he was thrown into a pit. Not because of the dream, but because of his voice. The dream didn't destroy him. The disclosure did. He wasn't punished for being wrong. He suffered for speaking too soon. That story is not just history. It's a warning. Your vision may be valid. Your prophecy may be pure. Your direction may be divine. But if you put it in the wrong atmosphere, it can become a target. And once it becomes a target, the process becomes longer, the journey becomes harder, and the cost becomes greater. Not everyone in your circle is qualified to hear what God told you in secret. Just because they're around you doesn't mean they're for you. Just because they listen doesn't mean they understand. And just because they agree doesn't mean they believe. Sometimes people will smile while they're plotting. They'll nod while they're doubting. And they'll clap while they're planning your collapse. So how do you protect what God gave you? You protect it in silence. You protect it in prayer. You protect it by speaking only when instructed and only to those with the capacity to carry it with honor. Wisdom does not shout in the street. Wisdom whispers. And the wise man listens before he speaks. The foolish man speaks before he listens. Understand this: God often hides what he values. He hid Moses in a basket. He hid Jesus in a manger. He hid David in the field. Because what is hidden is being prepared. And what is being prepared is not to be publicized. You have to become comfortable with being misunderstood. You have to learn the strength of solitude. The mark of maturity is not how loudly you speak, but how well you manage what you don't say. Silence is not weakness, it is strategy. And sometimes, the best way to protect what God has given you is to say nothing at all. Not every truth is for every year. Some truths are time sensitive. Sharing them too early can destroy their purpose and delay your destiny. There is a principle in the kingdom that few people talk about. It is not taught in universities, and it is rarely celebrated on platforms, yet it governs everything great that God has ever done. Every true vision is born in obscurity. Before a dream can stand in the light, it must first be formed in the dark. Before purpose is revealed to the world, it is concealed in silence. We are living in a generation that is addicted to visibility. Everyone wants to be seen. Everyone wants to be known. But true vision does not begin in the spotlight, it begins in secret. Every vision must be conceived in the dark. If it begins in the open, it will likely die in the open. But if it is rooted in stillness, hidden from noise, guarded in silence, it will grow with strength and stability. There is a reason the womb of a woman is in the dark. There is a reason seeds are buried in the soil. There is a reason the roots of a tree grow downward before the branches ever grow upward. Darkness is not a curse. It is the classroom of vision. It is the place where things are shaped without interference. It is where clarity is born. Too many people want to reveal before they are ready. They want to announce what heaven has whispered before it has been confirmed in their spirit. But vision must grow in silence. You cannot expect public validation for something that has not been privately cultivated. You must be willing to wrestle with what God showed you in solitude before you seek support from the crowd. Let me say this clearly. Just because you have seen something does not mean you are ready to say something. God often gives glimpses before He gives instructions. He gives pictures before He gives patterns. And if you move too quickly, you will take a snapshot and run with it, without ever waiting to develop the full blueprint. That's how people miss their timing. That's how dreams are prematurely exposed. That's how visions are attacked before they are protected. You must understand, the enemy cannot kill what he cannot see. So God hides it. He hides it to preserve it. He hides it to mature it. He hides it to test whether you can be trusted with what He's showing you. If you rush to reveal it, you bypass the process of refinement. You escape the discipline of patience. And anything born without process is fragile. Moses saw the vision early. He knew he was called to deliver his people. But when he acted too soon, without process, without preparation, he ended up in exile, not because the vision was wrong, but because the timing was off. God had to take him to the wilderness, not to punish him, but to prepare him. Because vision without development becomes destruction. Vision that is conceived in the dark learns how to listen. It learns how to wait. It develops discipline. It cultivates endurance. There is power in hidden seasons. That's when you hear God the clearest. That's when you learn the weight of your calling. That's when you stop depending on applause and start depending on His voice. You must protect your private seasons. Don't despise them. Don't rush out of them. That season where no one knows your name, where no one returns your calls, where no one sees your potential, that is where your roots are growing. That is where your spirit is being enlarged. That is where your assignment is gaining traction. And if you skip that season, you will rise without depth. And anything that rises without depth is destined to fall. So when God gives you a vision, don't post it. Protect it. Don't announce it. Anchor it. Let it grow in silence. Let it breathe in solitude. Let it develop in prayer. Because when the time comes, that vision will speak for itself. It won't need validation. It will come with authority. It won't need explanation. It will carry weight. A vision that is birthed in the dark cannot be shaken in the light. It has survived pressure. It has survived testing. It has survived silence. And because it was conceived in secret, it is ready for the stage. There are certain doors in your life that must remain shut. Not because what's behind them is bad, but because what's behind them is not ready to come out. One of those doors is your mouth. The mouth is not just for communication. It is for containment. It is the place where your future either gains protection or loses power. The mouth is the exit door of destiny. That means your future can leak through your lips. You can destroy what God is building in your life, not by disobedience, but by disclosure. You can abort your assignment not because it was flawed, but because it was exposed too early. You must understand that your words carry weight. They are not just expressions. They are permissions. When you speak, you authorize reactions in the spiritual realm. Your mouth gives instructions even when you don't realize it. That's why Jesus said, "By your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned." It's not just a matter of speaking. It's a matter of what you're giving permission to be born. Many people fail, not because the vision wasn't divine, but because they announced it before they established it. You must build before you broadcast. You must lay the foundation before you lift your voice. A building is only safe when its structure is strong enough to withstand public pressure. Likewise, your dream must be strong enough to stand in the light before you talk about it in the open. Speaking too early invites enemies too soon. It draws attention that your idea may not be ready to handle. It attracts critics, doubters, and destroyers before your plan has learned how to walk. Think about Nehemiah. When God put the vision to rebuild Jerusalem in his heart, Nehemiah said nothing for days. He surveyed the damage. He walked through the ruins. He observed in silence. Why? Because premature speaking weakens spiritual structure. There are conversations that can delay your progress. There are people whose ears are not qualified to hear your ideas. And if you speak into unprepared soil, your seed will die. not because it lacked power, but because the ground was not ready. The enemy does not always need to attack you directly. Sometimes he just waits for you to talk, because your own voice can become a liability. Satan doesn't need to steal what you're giving away freely. He listens for hints. He listens for fragments. And if you speak carelessly, he doesn't need to fight your vision. He only needs to whisper doubt into the ears of someone else to fight it for him. You must learn to manage your own mouth. Silence is not always suppression. It is spiritual strategy. There is power in restraint. When you keep your words, you are keeping your future. You are guarding what is sacred until it is ready to stand on its own. Jesus understood this. Often after performing miracles, he would say, "Tell no one." Why? Was he afraid of publicity? No. He understood the principle, not every act of power is meant to be announced. Some victories are meant to be hidden until their purpose is fulfilled. Because sometimes the noise can kill the movement. Your lips can betray your assignment. That's why maturity is not measured by how much you know. It is measured by how much you can withhold. If you must always speak, then you are not yet trusted with weighty things. God will never give deep revelation to people who have shallow discipline. If you talk about everything you receive, you will lose everything he gives. Don't let your mouth become a leak in the pipeline of your purpose. Don't let your tongue become the thief of your own future. Learn to close the door. Learn to seal the cracks. Learn to keep your spirit pregnant with vision until the time of delivery. When the time is right, your future will speak for itself. You won't need to announce it, it will announce you. You won't need to defend it, it will produce fruit. But until then, guard the door. Guard the vision. Guard your words. There is a language that needs no sound. There is a voice that speaks louder than words. It is the language of kings, the discipline of leaders, and the strategy of those entrusted with greatness. That language is silence. Silence is not absence. It is presence under control. It is not weakness. It is wisdom in disguise. It is not ignorance. It is intelligence restrained by timing. The wise have learned something that the foolish have yet to understand. Your silence is often more powerful than your statement. Fools rush to speak. They talk because they want to be heard, not because they have anything to say. They speak to impress, not to impact. They use words to fill the room, but they empty themselves in the process. And in their need to be noticed, they reveal their immaturity. The wise, on the other hand, are slow to speak. They study the room. They observe the faces. They discern the motives. They wait for the right moment, not just to speak, but to say what will matter. Because the wise understand that timing is everything. You can say the right thing at the wrong time and still be wrong. But if you wait, if you watch, if you discern, your words become weighty. Your voice carries authority. The book of Proverbs says, "Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and discerning if he holds his tongue." That's the power of silence. It protects your intelligence even when you don't have the answers. It gives you space to hear, to think, to process, to perceive. And it allows wisdom to settle before words are released. There is a reason the most valuable things in life are quiet. Diamonds do not make noise. Oil flows in silence. Trees grow without a sound. And the sun rises every day without saying a word. The louder something is, the less stable it usually is. The more secure something is, the less it needs to announce itself. Real power is never loud. It is quiet confidence rooted in clarity. That is why the wise use silence as a strategy. They know when to speak and when not to. They don't answer every accusation. They don't respond to every insult. They don't chase every rumor. Because to engage every voice is to lose your voice. The moment you start explaining yourself to everyone, you lose your authority. The wise understand that silence is sometimes the loudest defense. Jesus demonstrated this when he stood before Pilate, accused by the religious leaders, falsely charged, misunderstood, manipulated. He said nothing. He didn't argue. He didn't defend. He didn't justify, because his silence spoke louder than their slander. He knew who he was, and when you know who you are, you don't have to explain yourself to people who have already made up their minds. Some of you are tired because you're fighting battles with your mouth that could have been won with your silence. You're wasting energy responding to people who have no impact on your destiny. You're reacting to things that were meant to distract you. But the wise don't react. They respond. And sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. When you are truly wise, you use silence to locate people. You let them speak first. You let them reveal their heart. You let them expose their motives. Because if you speak too quickly, you might give access to the wrong people. You might invest energy where there is no return. You might cast pearls before swine. Wisdom listens before it speaks. It listens to the environment. It listens to the unspoken. It listens to the spirit. And when it finally speaks, it does not just add to the conversation. It changes it. Your silence is not just a strategy, it's a shield. It guards your mind. It protects your spirit. It keeps you from foolish arguments and petty distractions. When you're silent, you're still in control. But when you're always speaking, you become predictable, vulnerable, and easily manipulated. So do not despise silence. Embrace it. Master it. Use it. There are rooms you will enter where your silence will qualify you more than your speech. There are battles you will win not by shouting, but by standing still. There are doors that will open, not because you made noise, but because you made sense. There are things in your life that are not meant to be shared with everyone. Not because you're hiding, but because you're building. Not because you are being secretive, but because you are being strategic. Your dream is sacred. It is not common. It is not ordinary. It is a blueprint, a divine download from heaven, and it must be protected as such. Every builder understands that the blueprint is more important than the building itself. Without the blueprint, there can be no structure. Without the plan, there can be no product. That is why wise architects do not hand out the design to people who have no intention of helping them build. And yet many people treat their God-given vision like public property. They reveal it to people who have no spiritual maturity, no emotional loyalty, and no discernment to protect it. Let me tell you plainly, not everyone deserves access to your blueprint. Just because they're around you doesn't mean they're for you. Just because they ask doesn't mean they're entitled to an answer. Some people come close not to support your vision, but to study it, and eventually sabotage it. You must be careful who you allow into the sacred space of your planning. There are dream killers disguised as friends. There are destiny thieves wearing the mask of encouragement. And if you are not wise, you will expose something holy to people who see it as ordinary. And what they treat as common, they will crush. Jesus gave us the principle clearly: do not cast your pearls before swine. Why? Because pigs do not recognize value. They trample on what they don't understand. They destroy what they cannot discern. If you keep giving valuable pieces of your vision to people who lack spiritual eyesight, they will turn your revelation into ridicule. You must understand the value of secrecy. Every major move of God began in silence. Noah didn't invite everyone into the design of the ark. Moses didn't reveal the burning bush to every Israelite. Mary didn't post the angel's message. They carried what God gave them with dignity, discernment, and discipline. Some of you are fighting unnecessary warfare because you handed the blueprint to the wrong builder. You thought they would support you, but they resented you. You thought they would understand, but they mocked. You thought they were safe, but they were sent to spy. Let this be your lesson: intimacy does not mean access. Just because someone is close to you emotionally doesn't mean they are aligned with you spiritually. God will often give you a vision that is bigger than the people around you can handle. That is not a mistake, that is a test. He wants to see if you will protect what He gave you or prostitute it for applause. He wants to know if you can carry something sacred without the need for validation. There's a reason God gives dreams at night. There's a reason He speaks in the quiet. There's a reason visions are revealed in the secret place. Because they are meant to be nurtured, not displayed. Shared only with those who are qualified to carry the weight. That's why Jesus had 12, but only 3 went to the mountain. That's why He spoke to crowds, but revealed mysteries to disciples. That's why He said, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom. To you, not to everyone." Ask yourself this question: can they cover what I carry? Can they protect what I reveal? Can they pray over it rather than gossip about it? If the answer is no, they have no business seeing the blueprint. Because people who are not committed to the cost will never honor the construction. You need people who will not just celebrate your idea. They must guard it. They must labor with you in prayer, challenge you in weakness, and shield you in exposure. If they can't build with you, they don't belong in the blueprints. So be wise. Be selective. Be discerning. Don't confuse availability with ability. Just because someone is present doesn't mean they're prepared. Just because they're interested doesn't mean they're invested. Guard your dream. Honor your vision. Protect your blueprint. Your dream is sacred. Do not expose it to those who lack the capacity to protect it. There is a realm of God's dealings with man that cannot be explained. It must be discerned. It is the place where heaven begins to shape earth. It is where divine strategy is born. But here is what many miss: God's most powerful plans are not announced, they are concealed. His greatest works are not shouted, they are whispered. Divine strategy is often hidden in secrecy. God does not speak to impress, he speaks to instruct. And when he gives you a strategy, it is not for everyone. What he reveals in private is not meant for public consumption until the appointed time. It is sacred, it is weighty, it is kingdom. And it must be handled with discernment. Many people want to be used by God, but they do not understand how God moves. God works in silence. He shapes futures in the dark. He hides deliverance in obscurity. He deposits vision in vessels before he ever displays it to the world. Because heaven does not announce strategy, it releases it to those who can carry it. Look through the scriptures. Every major move of God began in secrecy. When God was about to birth a nation through Abraham, he didn't announce it on the mountaintop. He whispered it under the stars. When Joseph received a strategy to feed the world, it began with a dream that no one else could interpret. When Moses received the blueprint for Israel's deliverance, he was hidden in the desert for 40 years. Because divine strategy is not for crowds, it is for covenant. God hides his plans to protect them. He speaks in secrets to preserve them. If he revealed everything too early, the enemy would have room to destroy what he is trying to deliver. That is why Jesus often said, "My time has not yet come." Not because the power wasn't present, but because the moment wasn't appointed. God knows that the right strategy, released at the wrong time, becomes a burden, not a blessing. You must learn how to carry God's secrets. You must learn how to protect what he whispers. Some people lose divine momentum not because they are disobedient, but because they are too vocal. They expose what was meant to be incubated. They publicize what was meant to be protected. And in doing so, they invite warfare they are not prepared to fight. There is wisdom in discretion. There is power in privacy. There is strategy in silence. When God gives you an instruction, a plan, a method, a revelation, it is not always for the microphone. Sometimes it is only for the altar. Sometimes it is for prayer, not presentation. Sometimes it is for action, not attention. That is why discernment is critical. You must know the difference between a word that is for you and a word that is for them. A revelation that is meant to guide your obedience and one that is meant to guide your message. If you confuse the two, you will sabotage your own success. Understand this: the enemy studies patterns. He cannot see into your spirit, but he watches your habits. If you reveal your strategy too soon, you give him room to build a counterattack. That's why some of you feel like every time you get a breakthrough, it collapses. It's not because God changed his mind. It's because you exposed what was meant to remain in the secret place. Jesus said, "When you pray, go into your room and shut the door. Shut the door on noise. Shut the door on opinions. Shut the door on spectators. Because strategy is born behind closed doors. Destiny is shaped in solitude. Vision is molded in the womb of privacy. If you try to deliver what God gave you before it's fully formed, you will birth something incomplete." Even the devil didn't know what God was doing through Jesus. Paul said, "If the rulers of this world had known, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory." That means God hid the strategy of salvation inside the weakness of the cross. The very thing that looked like defeat was the weapon of victory. Because divine strategy doesn't look like human wisdom, it looks like surrender. So don't be discouraged if no one understands what God is telling you. Don't rush to explain it. Don't force others to approve it. If it's from God, it doesn't need applause. It just needs obedience. Wait for the appointed time. Move when he says move. Speak when he says speak. Until then, stay in the secret place. God works in silence. What he reveals in private is not for public consumption until the appointed time. My friend, your future is not casual. It is divine. It is too precious to be thrown to the dogs of opinion, too powerful to be handed over to unclean hands, and too sacred to be exposed without discernment. Silence is not a weakness. It is a weapon. It is not the absence of voice, but the presence of vision under restraint. Every seed requires soil. Every plan demands privacy. And every destiny must be defended, not always with words, but with wisdom. You do not need to announce what heaven is building. What God has ordained, he will reveal in his time. Until then, your job is not to impress the world. It is to obey the word. Guard your mouth. Guard your moments. Do not trade divine instruction for temporary attention. Speak when led, not when provoked. Move when directed, not when pressured. And remember this: kings do not talk like commoners. Visionaries do not speak as victims. And those who carry heaven's blueprint must walk in heaven's discipline. You don't owe everyone an explanation. You owe God your obedience. Hold your peace. Keep your mouth. and protect your future. Because in the silence of a wise man, nations are shaped. In the stillness of a submitted soul, greatness is born. May you have the courage to speak less, the wisdom to listen more, and the discipline to protect what God has planted in you until the day it bursts forth, not in noise, but in undeniable manifestation. Let those who have ears to hear, hear, and let those who have understanding keep quiet long enough to become great.